Hello, everyone. Happy end of chapter 8. I'm sorry it's been so long, but also I'm sorry for the backlighting, but it's almost 100 degrees today, so we are sitting in the shade. All right, so last we left, they had discovered a secret door, and they had opened it expecting something awful to happen, and nothing happened at first, so they went in, and then bats started flying out at them. The first 100 bats were immediately followed by several thousand more. Addison ducked and waited for the storm to pass. It was hard to tell what was more terrifying, the bats' high-pitched screeching or Eddie's high-pitched screaming. At last, the cloud of bats tapered off. Eddie slowly regained his breath. And then a few hundred more bats flew shrieking out of the cave for good measure. Eddie sat down on the cold rock. I liked the dead people better. A big, slow bat loped out of the cave, squawking at him, and flapped down the tunnel. I think that's the last of them, Eddie sighed. Addison's team ducked as another 1,000 bats passed Eddie's head. The group entered a final chamber with a high arched ceiling. Raj found an ancient torch that he managed to light after snapping several matches. He held the flickering torch aloft. The hall was flanked by 13 suits of armor covered in the dust of centuries. Each medieval gauntlet clutched a rusted axe or broadsword. Their jagged shadows lurched and danced in the torchlight. Eddie stared transfixed at the plumed Spanish helmets. He rose on his tiptoes to peer through the slats of the visor, then yelped as he spotted a skull inside, leering back at him. There are skeletons in this room, too! Addison blew dust from the knight's shield and examined the coat of arms. Francisco Pizarro's famous 13, he said reverently. The Spanish knights who stuck by him at Isla de Gallo. These were the conquistadors who overthrew Atahualpa and conquered all of Peru. Why are they in an Incan burial ground? Asked Molly. I thought Diego hated Pizarro. It's a mystery, Addison admitted. There are wheels within wheels. He led his team down the center aisle where the tattered remains of a red carpet crumbled to dust beneath their feet. At the end of the chamber stood a raised platform, and on the platform was a single pedestal, guarded by the silent shadows of the knights. Addison slowly lifted his gaze. On the pedestal, glittering in torchlight, lay Atahualpa's second key. Eddie gasped. It's pure silver. Just that key alone will make us rich. Addison, keeping his distance, carefully studied the key, the pedestal, and the raised platform. Raj, what do you think? I think we didn't come all this way to waltz into a booby trap. That's what I think. Agreed, said Addison. He swung his flashlight beam up to the ceiling, but could not spot any hidden wires or guy ropes. Raj, can you borrow a sword from one of those knights? With pleasure. Raj had already been eyeing the heavy bronze broadswords with admiration. He wrestled one from the rusted gauntlet of the shortest knight and passed it hilt first to Addison. Addison hefted the sword, his arms shaking from the weight. He gingerly poked the stone platform. Eddie ducked and covered his head, expecting bats. Nothing happened. Addison probed the marble pedestal with a few cautious taps. Again, nothing happened. "If a booby trap doesn't kill me, the tension will," said Eddie. Addison shushed him. He needed to concentrate. Arm muscles trembling, Addison raised the sword to the top of the pedal and gently, ever so gently, nudged the key. In a massive explosion, rocketing through the room with blinding light, Addison's team hit the deck, clutching their ringing ears. "I think I just had a heart attack," Eddie gasped. "What was that?" asked Molly, waving the acrid smoke from her nose and sneezing. Addison picked up his ivy cap from the floor and stared at it in astonishment. He poked his finger through a seared hole in the peak. "A bullet hole," he whispered. He aimed his flashlight at a small loophole concealed in the far wall. That was a musket shot. Addison panned his flashlight around the room, revealing a dozen gun bores burrowed into the wall. "Spring guns," said Addison, his voice shaky with fear and wonder. "You move the key, and muskets fire." Raj took Addison's cap and turned it over in his hand, staring at the bullet hole in amazement. "Addison, if you were as tall as a grown-up, you'd be dead." "We've found our advantage." Addison tucked his cap back on his head. "These traps aren't designed for us. The Incans counted on conquistadors, not middle schoolers." Addison handed the sword to Molly. "Mo, you're the shortest. Would you do the honors?" Molly blew the hair from her eyes. She grunted as she hoisted the long sword. Everyone else ducked and covered their ears. Molly swung the sword like a baseball bat. She knocked the key clear off the pedestal. The muskets fired in a deafening blast that echoed around the stone room. By the time Molly's ears stopped ringing, Addison held the key safely in his hand. It was heavy in his grip. Addison hardly dared to believe it was real. He wiped away the dust with the heel of his palm. "Solid silver," Eddie said, his eyes glowing. "Do you think anyone upstairs heard the blast?" asked Molly. "It doesn't matter," said Addison. "We have the key now. We're through the worst of it." That is the end of chapter 8.